Okay, so we're now live streaming, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay. Welcome back. I think we've missed. We had the division. Grayson, can you call out so that the councillors all know exactly where they stand and the division is clear?
Yeah. So for item 8.1 on the proposal for the representation review, those who voted in favour were the Mayor, Councillor Holbrow, Councillor Buswell, Councillor Coots, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Handford and Councillor McCann. Those who voted against were Councillor Elliott, Councillor Compton, Councillor Pravanov and Councillor Randall. There were 7 votes in favour and 4 votes against.
Okay. We are now going to report 8.2, review of the General Bylaw 2010. That's on your page 58. Reporting officers Lisa Boyd, Senior Policy Advisor.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Just going to, I will take the paper as being read, but I will just give a brief summary of what the process was and where we've got to, and take some questions at the end if you have any. We also have our legal counsel, Timp, available should you have any legal questions. So just to give you a general run through, the General Bylaw was due to have be expiring early next year. That's within the last period in which we can review it. We have now conducted our review, and so we're reporting back to you on that. When our current General Bylaw was adopted in 2010, it was adopted as part of a legal practice at the time of separating out consolidated bylaws into a general bylaw and then a range of topic-specific bylaws. So what we're left with in the general bylaw that we have at the moment is just a whole range of administrative provisions that are used in some of the other bylaws. So we have now done our statutory review on that. And overall, so what we've found is actually most of the content of our current general bylaw is either redundant or replicated in some of the other bylaws. There's been another quite significant change in terms of legislative practice, with a lot of the modern legislative practice centering around short, consistent legislation that doesn't repeat anything and is very clear. We've actually been moving towards that use of a very clear, non-repeating, non-replicating process in our bylaws for 2 or 3 years. And so actually a number of our bylaws don't even actually rely on the general bylaw anymore, because as they have come up for their statutory reviews, we have been inserting any of the provisions in the general bylaw into the individual bylaws so that they can stand alone by themselves. So the purpose of that legislative practice in modern days is that the one piece of legislation where someone would go to find topic-specific information would also include all the administrative and other definitions that would be needed for them to understand the use of that bylaw. So we've been doing that for quite some time now. So as a result, what we're actually found is that most of our clauses in our general bylaw are not actually required. They're not required because either they're in another piece of legislation already, such as the Local Government Act, or they're also already in the other individual bylaws. So what we're recommending is quite similar to what a lot of other councils are doing, and that is we're recommending that you revoke the general bylaw and move any of the necessary provisions into the individual bylaws so that we have a full set of standalone individual bylaws. So that's what we're trying to do. In order to determine what we would have had what we would have to move to make that happen. We have done a full stock take of every clause in the general bylaw and then all of our other bylaws, and gone through clause by clause in each of the other bylaws to see, is that needed? Is it necessary? Is it already there? Would we need to put it in? What we've found is there's actually only a very, very small numbers of amendments that we need to make. So those are identified in the schedule to this paper. Consequential amendments of revoking the general bylaw. As we were doing the clause by clause stock take through, which resulted in about 5 pages of A3 stock take, we've also were looking at the individual bylaws, and we noticed a couple of little things where there were some technical errors or inconsistencies. Maybe something had changed in one place but not been updated in a bylaw. And we're also recommending that we make some of those minor and technical changes as well at the same time. They are identified as the supplementary changes in that schedule. So while it looks like quite a significant change, really all the recommended revocation would mean is just a change in presentation. Instead of having everything in that one general bylaw, which people wouldn't necessarily refer to, everything will be in the standalone bylaws as well. No rules change as a result of this. Nobody's rights or obligations or responsibilities, penalties or access change as a result of any of these changes. This is just a moving round of where things sit. Some of the clauses that do appear quite useful in the general bylaw are very informational in terms of how licenses work and things like that. And so that kind of information is actually usually already sitting in that license application or on those conditions of license. So that's a better place for the user of that information rather than having to go to one bylaw. There's a set of forms, it links to another bylaw. So all in all, the recommendation is to revoke. It'll make it a cleaner system and clearer. Things won't be repeated, and the information will be more readily available to members of the community who might look at a bylaw and want to know what the full set of details are for that bylaw. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have on that.
Right, question time. Jocelyn.
Thank you, through the Mayor, thank you, Lisa, for this presentation. One thing that I have to admit I always struggle with when I look at these bylaws is and particularly when it talks about fines and infringement notices, where you can actually find those figures. And I just want to ask how they are being encapsulated in this process, or because they're not actually standalone in each of those bylaws.
Hello, yes,
Yeah.
sorry, I was just waiting to be unmuted. There wasn't a lot of changes in terms of the fines and infringement notices. Most of those were already sitting within the individual bylaws. So we're not adding any more information to those, but that might be something for us to be aware of as we continue our regular statutory reviews. We certainly have a focus on trying to be a bit clearer about what the ramifications are. For example, in the recent beach bylaw, we listed in this situation, you would be due a fine of this, and this you would be due a fine of that. So that's certainly the best practice and will be followed on from now on.
So thank you for that, and certainly the beach bylaw, that was really well documented, and I think there's quite a good process that went into identifying those. But at present, well, just now, the traffic bylaw has process has now started, and I need to look at it a bit harder, but it's from my memory that, for example, if people park on berms, that and if they get pinged, that is an infringement notice. But I think you've actually got to go to the legislation to find out what those potential amounts are, which, members of the general public aren't going to do that. So I think it's about trying to find a way that provides people with the information much more easily than having to delve into acts and to regulations. So so maybe just a general comment, but also how that relates to the traffic bylaw, which is under consultation at present. If you know about that, I think you do.
So no, I'm sorry, I don't know about that. So I haven't looked at the individual bylaws because I was doing a review of the general bylaw. So no, I can't comment on that. Where we would set a infringement fee by a bylaw, the practice would be to write that in the bylaw. When the infringement fee is set by another piece of legislation, the modern practice is not to repeat that, because if that other legislation changes, then you also have to change all of your own. So the modern legislative practice is there are things in one place and then they're not repeated, so that you don't have outdated and outmoded things over the time. So that would be where the good operational pages that assist and sit beside those bylaws should be trying to make it easy for people to find out what the ramifications are. If we've set a particular infringement by that bylaw itself, rather than it's just another one reflected from somewhere else, then that would certainly be written in the bylaw. But I can't change that as part of this review, which is just limited to the general bylaw.
So I know I'm going off piste a bit here, but in relation to just the general writing of these things, and I understand why it refers to
you've got a question.
different.
Have you got a question?
Yes, I have. When it relates to another piece of legislation, would it be useful to say what the fee is, but also say subject to change in that legislation?
I'm not sure that provides any more useful information for the user, particularly if fines have changed significantly since the note that you're going to put in a bylaw. You could give someone quite a different idea. So the idea of modern legislative practice is not to do that. So that's the trend that we're going with at the moment. I think that's about all I could say on that, because I haven't specifically looked into those particular issues, because I was just looking at the general bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just comment on that matter?
Yeah, Tim.
Look, I can understand Councillor Pravinov's concern, but where fines are set in primary legislation, it's not good.
What?
Maybe his battery's died, mine's on 10%.
Yeah.
Tim,
so that's the reason we wouldn't. Sorry, you can't hear me?
No.
Sorry, I'll.
We can hear you now. You're cutting out.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I was just saying the reason for not repeating fines that are set in primary legislation in our bylaws is they become out of date very quickly when the amount of the fine in the primary legislation is changed. And we just want to avoid having to amend our bylaws constantly.
Right. Any other questions? No, otherwise somebody move recommendation 23 to 27 on page 60. Who have we got? Janet Holbrook moved. Seconded.
Angela Buswell.
Angela Buswell. Right. Any intro? Right of intro. Janet.
It's just to thank staff for their work on this report, and yeah, it's all fairly straightforward. Thank you.
Right. Recommendation 23 to 27 moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor Buswell. Any debate? No. All those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. You're voting now.
So we have 10 votes so far.
Anybody not voted?
Appears we don't have Councillor Randall at the moment.
Oh,
All votes are in favour.
okay, carried. We now go on to the confirmation of minutes, item 9 on page 63.
Your Worship, can I just say on the council meeting for the 29th of July, we have had Edwina Allen request that her surname be spelt correctly. So it currently says Ellen, E-L-L-E-N, and it should be Allen, A-L-L-E-N.
Is that the June one or the July one?
July 29th.
So with an amendment. Okay. No queries. Jackie, Councillor Elliott?
Hi, look, I'm not sure exactly which minute it is.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
One of them misspells my name, E-L-I-I-O-T-T.
Right.
I mean, thank you. I'm not sure what page at this point in time.
We'll double check that and make that change, Councillor Elliott. Our apologies.
Thanks, guys.
Right. No other corrections or any issues. I think we should move both the meeting of 24th June and 26th of July together. Will somebody move that?
Happy to move.
Councillor Elliott, can I have a seconder?
Councillor Handford. Councillor Handford.
Councillor Hanford. So that this is a true and accurate report of the minutes. Councillor Elliott and Councillor Hanford seconded. All those in favour vote yes.
Yes, we have all votes in favour.
Right. Carried. So at this point, I have to leave because I've got another Zoom to do, and Councillor Coates will chair. Thank you very much for an interesting meeting, and wish you well under the able chairmanship of President Coates.